Now, this might come to a shock to you, but did you know that Uber drivers are making $55,000 a year? According to Uber? Well, a lot of critics are saying, hold on, not so fast. There's a lot of different things that you're not accounting for, and they're making just very simple math because of this new estimated earnings tool that Uber is releasing in several cities, and that's what we're talking about right now. Hey everyone, Chris here from Real Rideshare Stories. If you're new to the channel and you're looking for different things within the rideshare industry, whether it's updates to what's going on, news, tips and tricks for passengers and drivers, or what actually happens on real rideshare rides, start now by hitting that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Also make sure to check the description below for other helpful information and tips. So just this past week, Dara, the CEO of Uber, put out an op-ed that we covered on a video that if you want to go check that out, I break it down over the whole thing, plus a couple other things. So you could go back, check it out. Link will be up here in the corner. I think it's here. I'll put that there for you. So if you want to check that out, you can. And then they are doing something called an earnings estimator for different cities across the US to see exactly how much you can expect to make when you are an Uber driver. But a lot of people are also saying that it doesn't include a lot of things like expenses, which could be car maintenance, gas, and other maintenance related costs or expenditures that you may not really understand if you are a brand new driver or if you're just looking at it at face value. So the earnings estimator is live across several cities in the US already, and you just got to go in your app to find it. Now it is also live in my market, so I will show you exactly what it looks like in just a little bit. But Uber is claiming that drivers are making upwards of $55,000 a year, but they're not taking into account everything. They're just basically saying your wage, what you receive, but they're not taking into account different expenses. And then the big thing is how many hours drivers are actually working. So not all drivers are working enough to make that $55,000 a year. In fact, many drivers are making much less than that. And with that being said, there is an exception to every rule. In fact, there are many drivers who have probably made the 55,000K mark per year. And there's even reports of a few drivers who hit over six figures a year, hitting at least 100,000 a year. This article is from CBS News and it's titled, Uber says its drivers make $55,000 a year, but some critics cry phony baloney. And a link will be in the description below, so if you want to check this out, then you can. So going on, it says Uber for the first time is giving access to internal data about how much its drivers earn in dozens of urban areas around the US. The amount, $55,000 in cities like Washington, D.C. and Denver, is about $5,000 more than the median annual wage for American workers. That income also far exceeds what independent studies estimate Uber drivers earn. For instance, a joint study from the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics of the University of California, Berkeley, and the New School Center for New York City Affairs last month found that Uber drivers in Seattle earned about $9.73 an hour, or just over $20,000 a year. Now it is special note that Seattle is coming out with a minimum wage that is going to look like it's going to be happening on January 1st, 2021. And I will be making a video on that because there's a lot of different things dealing with that minimum wage itself. So going on, it says Uber CEO Dara announced a new tool that lets people estimate driver pay in a New York Times opinion piece on Monday, which he also argued that gig workers like the company's drivers deserve better treatment. At the same time, Uber and competitor Lyft have been ordered by a California court to treat drivers in that state as employees instead of independent contractors, a shift that would guarantee benefits like overtime and sick pay. And that is exactly something that we just had talked about in yesterday's video, where the judge had denied their extension or their application for extension of that 10-day grace period for the appeal. So they may be shutting down in California only. So Dara said the company's earnings estimator is designed to provide more transparency about driver wages, but critics say it's misleading. And again, I will show you exactly what it looks like in just a few moments. I think Uber's numbers are phony baloney, said economist Larry Michel, a distinguished fellow at the left-leaning Economic Policy Institute and author of a 2018 study about Uber's wages. Michel, who also found that most full-time Uber drivers make less than $20,000 a year, said the company's earnings estimates fail to account for out-of-pocket costs drivers pay, such as gas and vehicle maintenance, which result in sharply lower wages. People often mistake earnings for wages, and you can't compare Uber's numbers to what you would make driving a truck or working at McDonald's, he added. And that is very true because there's a lot of expenses when you're operating your vehicle. In his Times op-ed, Dara called current unemployment laws outdated, adding that gig economy companies should be required to pay into a designated fund that workers could tap to for benefits like paid time off or healthcare. But Uber and Lyft say they will appeal the California ruling that would require them to provide benefits to workers. Sounds a little fishy there, but we've talked about that in many different ways. The Uber earnings estimator provides results for 32 metropolitan areas, but excludes some major cities as Chicago, New York, and San Francisco. An Uber spokesperson for the company said plans to add more features, such as allowing drivers to determine the most profitable hours to drive. The estimator computes expected weekly earnings based on the driver's city and how many hours they plan to work, but it doesn't specify how many trips or miles the driver would have to travel in that time to achieve those earnings. And going on, in Denver, for example, Uber's earnings estimator says drivers who work 40 hours a week can expect to make $1,171, including $96 in tips. If a driver also makes deliveries for UberEATS, the company's food service, drivers can expect to make $1,200 a week, which translates to an annual salary of $62,400 a year. The only problem with that is 1 week, and you're multiplying it by 52 weeks to try to get exactly what you'll make. It doesn't take into account a lot of the other things that go along with it. So it says, but Uber's earnings estimator, unlike outside studies, provides a gross figure that's more like a company's sales rather than its earnings, which factor in expenses. And that's part of the reason why it doesn't really do that great when it comes down to it. The Berkeley New School study, as well as EPI's research, subtracts the expenses Uber drivers cover themselves, such as gas, insurance, and damage to their cars, as well as maintenance. Even before such costs, the Berkeley New School study found that Uber drivers still only earn about $21 an hour, or the annual equivalent of $45,000. And that's if the drivers work 40 hours a week for 52 weeks a year. That doesn't include any time off. That includes 40 hours a week, every single week, no matter what. So then it goes on, it says Uber's new wage tool bases pay estimates on data only from the past month rather than a year or more. The rideshare company said that using data from the previous month helps to provide the most up-to-date estimate on what drivers can expect to earn. There is a problem with that because there are going to be certain times when it's going to be much slower or much busier, and that can change and fluctuate month to month. So sometimes historical data like the previous year would be probably a better estimate to at least figure out exactly what you possibly could be looking at if the conditions were pretty similar. So it says, but that approach could lead to misleading earning estimates, according to experts. Because Americans are still reluctant to travel during the pandemic, Uber's ridership has plunged and has the number of drivers as well. That recent drop in drivers could be boosting earnings for those who remain and causing atypical high earning estimates from Uber's calculator. And that is another thing as well. Many markets are offering very high promotions. They're also offering surge pretty much every single time you go online or look at the map. You can see surge in your area, as well as, like I said, these different quests that they're offering, where a lot of the times these aren't available in certain markets as well, but they are trying to do that. So yeah, the earnings estimator, especially right now, may be a little skewed. So it goes on, an Uber spokesperson said the Berkeley New School study was based on limited data and flawed assumptions about drivers' experience that are unsupported by facts, evidence, or reality. The spokesperson also said the authors of the study throw the kitchen sink at driver expenses in order to deflate wages. On the EPI study, the Uber spokesperson said, "While we appreciate EPI's contribution to this important topic of research, the paper makes several questionable claims and assumptions while altogether ignoring the flexibility drivers tell us they value and cannot find in traditional jobs." There's that thing with flexibility again that Uber and Lyft love to use. But then it goes on, EPI's Michelle said Uber had previously compared driver salaries to retail or restaurant service workers who tend to make less than the average American worker. Uber looks at driver wages as a second source of income where drivers don't have to have an extra car or pay for additional insurance, he said. Compare their drivers to workers at traditional full-time jobs, and Uber's drivers are making less. So as you can see, there is discrepancies on both sides of it. The question is, what do you think about that? Yes, Uber is not taking into account anything besides what you as a driver are getting from the company, and they don't take into account gas, maintenance, repairs, insurance, and a lot of different other costs that will be associated with driving that they don't tell you about. And so that data is flawed, but then also the other data could be flawed as well because they don't have a full picture. And that is pretty much true, at least because Uber is taking all of their historical data in that particular market and pushing it in the earnings estimator. The only thing is these other studies and companies and places are looking at a lot of data. They're just not looking at the full picture, but they are bringing in the introduction of all of these expenses. So you're probably going to find some truth in between, but it's really going to come down to what you are making. So if you're not making a lot of money on the road, you might have to adjust your way of doing things in order to try to make more. Because yes, you can get out there and you can make money. So now let's look at this estimated earnings tab feature that Uber is rolling out in different markets. And this again is from my market. So it's going to show you that says we estimate earnings using data from upstate New York drivers who drove in the past 4 weeks. It's particularly difficult to predict driving patterns due to COVID-19, so your actual earnings may greatly differ from these estimates. And you could see in 10 hours work, you can expect to have $276 a week, which would include 18 in tips. Now you can do a sliding scale, and we're going to go over each one so you can see exactly what it's going to look like. So going on, it says if you work 15 hours, you can expect 428 a week. Around 20 hours, you could get 569 a week. Around 25 hours, 722 a week. 30 hours is 859 a week. 35 is 991. 40 hours is 1146. 45 hours is 1272. And it goes up to 50 hours a week, which would say 1535 a week. But as you can see, this only accounts for what you would take home and what Uber is going to pay out. This doesn't include what you'd look at about for the miles you drive to get that. That doesn't say the amount of trips that you'd probably get during this time frame. And yes, those factors are much different because you could have a few long trips in there. You could have a lot of short trips in there. Then also it's going to depend on how much surge there is going on in the area, how much promotions or quests they're going to have in the area. So it's going to be a little bit different, and it could be very different. And this is why I say that this number and these things aren't really going to make a difference when you're out on the road. Now, if you're a new driver, this could have a potential impact, but you also have to know when and where to go out in order to make the most amount of money in your particular market. And that's going to take time to learn, and it's going to have to fit into your schedule. Now, what do you think about all this? Do you think that Uber is blowing more smoke up people's butts to try to make it seem like, yeah, their drivers are making a lot of money, but when you take into different considerations like expenses, insurance, gas, mileage, maintenance, all of these different things, that it's going to bring it substantially down? Comment below, letting me know all your thoughts on this. Now that's the end of this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you'll be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Also, make sure to check the description below for any other helpful information and tips. And as always, never drink and drive. Always tip your drivers, your delivery drivers, and your shoppers. And we'll see you next time.